Good afternoon everyone, it's Mrs. Geek again with another R081 pre-production skills exam preparation video. This one has been requested several times in the comments over the last few days, and it is a what to expect one, and in it we're going to be covering how does the exam work, what might I get asked, and how do you answer it. Okay, let's get started in a minute. Let's roll the intro. Okay, so in today's video, as I just said, we're going to have a little bit of a look at how the exam works, what you might get asked, and how you answer it. Now, this isn't going to be a lesson video. Obviously, you've been taught the content already, so now it's just about testing your knowledge of it. But I am going to just briefly outline what this exam is actually going to be covering. Now, the first thing you've got is your 5 pre-production documents: your mood board, mind map, storyboard, visualization diagram, and scripts. Now, on those, you might get asked any of the following: what they are, what they contain, who uses them, and how to make them. Now, the only exception to that one is the script here. You won't be asked to create a script, but you could be asked to create any of the other documents. Second part of the exam is your client requirements. So this is where you get given a requirement and you get to have to explain what is being asked, or how you're going to create something very similar to the R082 creating digital graphics if you've done that. Target audience, you may be asked to identify elements of a target audience, or you might be able to have to provide something. So it might say given age range. Or work plan, you might be asked to identify areas of a work plan. So it might be like a labeled diagram. You have to say what elements are labeled. You might have to create a work plan, and I covered that in a previous video, which is highlighted up here. You might have to identify types of research. Now, primary research is that type of research you carry out yourself, so your questionnaires, surveys, interviews, etc. Secondary research being the type that you source elsewhere, already in existence. So it could be via books, it could be via web pages, encyclopedias, biographies, etc. Primary being from the source or something you created yourself. Secondary being created elsewhere or somebody else has done the work for you. Resources, hardware, software. You need to be aware of different hardware and software that's available. Now, this might be hardware to use. Typically, this comes in a how would you digitize a mood board, mind map, etc. So be aware of hardware you can use for that. Software will tend to be a question based on what software would you use to create a mood board, to create a work plan for a storyboard, for example. Your health and safety questions. These will typically be based around using a computer, using heavy equipment, working from heights, and working from electricity. Again, I covered that in a previous video. And lastly, legislation. Now, this is generally going to be based around how you can use assets in a scenario. And again, this will vary depending on what the scenario is in your exam. It could be about using a logo. It could be about using a brand, for example, anything like that. So just be aware that that might be in it. The next one that might be in it is file formats and compression. File formats, you need to be aware of 4 different types. You need to be aware of image file formats for both the web and for print. Video file formats for web and also for high quality like stored video. Same for audio, and lastly for animation as well. And then you need to be aware of the 2 types of compression, being lossy and lossless. And again, that was covered in the live stream that I did about last week. So I will link to that in this video as well. So what I thought would be best for today is I'm going to go through some exam papers and then we'll have a look at the questions, the structure, because it's quite similar across the papers, so you can get an idea of what you're going to expect. So let's move to those exam papers now. So the first thing I want to take you to before I go through some of these exam paper questions with you is this OCR page here. Now, it's actually got all of the exam spec, etc. on it, and it's mostly used by teachers and administrators, etc. However, if you go to this assessment section, there is a section here called question papers, mark schemes, and reports. And a lot of these exam papers and mark schemes are available to you to download and use as part of your revision. So I've got the January 2017 all the way up to the 2019 ones, and I believe after that they're locked at the moment, but that's a lot of material available to help your revision. Now, I always think that doing question papers and exam questions are one of the best ways to revise and retrieve your knowledge on this subject. Now, going through and highlighting a book will take you so far. However, being able to recall and write down the answers to those questions is going to go much further in terms of strengthening your knowledge of the subject. So this is a goldmine of activities for you to do here. So you'll see you've got the question paper and the mark scheme. I do recommend having a look at the mark scheme, and I'll tell you for why. It not only obviously tells you the answers, which is useful, it tells you what level it's based at. So you've got these ones that are level 1 merit, so these are lower level questions, and then you've got higher ones as you go down. So on here we've got, look, this one goes all the way from level 1 pass up to a level 2 distinction, but it also gives you for some of those later questions a real breakdown of what they're looking for in here. So look, it says on here, like, you must justify why and not just describe them, and they must match the images, and it gives you a lot of information on here about what they're expecting, and obviously you can take that information and apply it to the exam you're going to be doing. So I do recommend doing this hand in hand with the exam paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you 3 different exam papers and just show you the scenarios and how they vary, but also are similar as we go through. So let's open up the first one, shall we? Okay, so I've got 3 exam papers here. I've got January 2018, January 2019, and January 2017. So I just want to show you what the front page looks like and how it will look like in your exam. Now, as I've said previously, it's a paper-based exam, which means it's not based on a computer, and it is 1 hour and 15 minutes. Obviously, if you've got special arrangements in place, then that will vary. And you'll obviously get a front page that looks like this. You'll ask me put your full name and surname in, your centre number and candidate number, which will be provided by your school, college, etc. You do need to use black ink for this one. You might need to use pencil as well, but obviously not for the whole thing. You do also need to answer all the questions. So there's nothing optional in here, unlike some of the other ones. And don't write in any of these barcodes, because that's what's used to scan in, obviously, your marks and details about the paper at the end. Your quality of written communication is assessed in any question that's marked with an asterisk, and as far as I'm aware, that is the 12-mark question. So the 12-mark question, we'll come on to that one in a bit, is the only one that's going to assess your written communication as you go through the exam. So what I want to show you now is just how similar these exams are. So if I go down to this section A, your first thing you'll see here is that it gives me a scenario. Now this one is a very brief scenario, but what I recommend you doing is with a pencil or a highlighter, just go through and highlight any key information about that scenario, because that's going to stick with you through the whole exam paper, and every question is going to be based on that scenario. So you almost want to start living and breathing that scenario, and in your head imagine that you are actually doing this as a job. Okay, so all of your questions are going to be based on this. So I know that this is a teenage fashion magazine, and I know, let me get a proper highlighter out, I know that it's called BG Style and it's being published in March. So I've got a deadline here already, and I know that it is a teenage fashion magazine. Pop that there. So let's have a look how that differs for one of the other magazines. So 2019, again, a scenario. So my client here is Progress Walk. They are developing a smartphone health app. I know here that my target audience is going to be adults, because it's encouraging adults to exercise more. And it tells me a little bit about how it works. So they'll score points and they'll upload photos. So it needs to do some uploading of some sort. And they can exchange points. And then let me just highlight this again, because it didn't quite highlight it last time. So again, exactly the same format, just a different scenario. And then lastly, I have got 2018 one, which has another scenario here. So let me just click on here again. So this time my client is R081, and they are releasing a new comic and internet-based animation series. So you've got 2 things to think about here: one static, one moving, focusing on a character called Velocity Girl, who is age 14. So again, I might give you an idea here about your audience. Has the ability to move fast in water and on land. They're going to be released at the same time, so that's a useful bit of information to know. And they want to launch an advertising campaign to promote both of these. So quite a lot of information on here, but if you highlight and underline it, you've got that there. You've already started activating your brain in terms of this scenario. So the first question is usually regarding one of those 5 pre-production documents. And again, I'm going to show you how they differ on here. Now, I'm not going to answer them all. I've already done a video that goes through a whole exam paper, which I will link to up here. But just to show you what to look for in here. So this first one here, R081 has requested you produce a physical mood board. Keyword there again. So physical mood board is one that is done on paper, or on a board or something like that. So it's not done on a computer, and that's going to be for the comic and the animation series. So that first question is asking you about 4 items that could be included. So that's about the content of a mood board. Let's have a look at this one. So this one, again, creating a physical mood board for the smartphone app. 3 items that could be on it. See there's a pattern emerging here. And lastly, most appropriate pre-production document other than a script for planning audio visual. So audio visual involves movement and sight as well, so you've got the audio and the visual parts. Obviously don't put a script because I've already got that, but hopefully you'll be aware that obviously the other document that involves movement will be a storyboard. And again, 3 items that could be included on this document. So you can already see these ones are testing your knowledge of the content and variety of pre-production documents, and it could be any of the 5 documents that it covers on there. So that's your first question. They're usually low level, these first ones, just to sort of like ease you in gently. So again, the most pre-production document, why that's the most pre-production document. So that's you understanding the purpose of a pre-production document. Let's have a look at this next question for me. So this first one here, again, and it tends to focus you in the same order as if you were doing this in real life. So now we're looking at research. We're researching our app. So in the smartphone health app, points will be awarded that can be exchanged for healthy food. They need to find out which shops it would link the app to. Describe how primary research, so primary research is your key word here. So research you carry out yourself could be used to find out which shops could be linked to for these discounts. So again, you're going to think about what research could you do to identify what shops might want to take part in this app and what wants to link it to. Again, part B, they provided you with data about potential users and the shops that they used. The data was gathered by another company and presented in a report to Progress Walk. So again, what type of research is this? Is it primary or secondary? Have you done it themselves? No. And then identify one other source of information that can be used to find out the shopping habits of the target audience. So again, what other types of research are there? Now, it's not specifying here whether it needs to be primary or secondary, so it's leaving it quite open in that respect. So again, a relatively lowish level question here. I'm going to go flip back to one of these to see what theirs are. So this one again, research. So the magazine has a teenage target audience of all genders. One type of primary research other than focus groups, so don't put focus groups down, that could be used to gather information. So again, have a think about what primary research you could carry out yourself. The use of focus groups questions to be directly to the members of the target audience. Explain why using focus groups will allow detailed information. So this is, again, do you understand what the point of primary research is? How does it give you a benefit? What does it allow you to gather? And then it's going to go on to secondary research. Identify one method of secondary research and explain how it can be used in the production of the magazine. So again, this time it's just checking your knowledge of secondary research and you explaining how you would use it. And again, let's have a look at the last one. So again, this one goes straight into the work plan now. So still in that planning phase. And this is one I said to you earlier, which you might get, which is where you have to actually identify the parts. So it's given you, this is actually quite a nice one, 4 marks. And all you've got to do is label. Now, if you're not sure, or if you look at this and think, oh God, I have no idea what that one is, or I have no idea what that one is, pick off the ones you do know. And then you can do processes of elimination. So at least if you pick off the ones you do know, then that gives you a fighting chance at the end, because obviously there's only going to be one of these that isn't, and it isn't a question. I think there's a part B. So using one of the tasks, explain how the term workflow is applied to the production of the Velocity Girl comic. So again, this is a question of you understanding the elements of a work plan and explaining that. 3 marks here. Always look at those marks. If it's 1 mark, it's not going to expect a lot of information. If it's 2 or 3 marks, it's going to be needing more. And particularly because this one says how it's applied to the production of the comic. So it's going to ask you to mention the comic as part of your answer in here. That's why it's worth 3 marks. Okay, so question 3. This one goes into health and safety. What are 2 health and safety issues that could be considered by people using the computers? This is a working with computers one to develop the animation comic series. As I said in the previous videos, please don't go too niche with this one. I've had people in the past go on to things like epilepsy and diabetes, etc. You want to go with like general things such as like back strain, eye strain, RSI, things like that. So don't go too niche with this one. Let's have a look at the other 2, see what they've got in them. Question 3, this one is about legislation. So they're going to be using images of clothes and styles that are still being created by designers and are not yet being produced. They are the intellectual property of the designers. So how can BG Style use these without getting in trouble? So this is testing your understanding of how legislation applies to images. So again, that's how you'd answer that one. Okay, let's go on to question 4 then. So question 4 on Velocity Girl. The animation series requires a number of storyboards. again, go through and highlight things. You won't lose a mark for highlighting things. It's a great thing to do. It's going to be shown on the internet. That's really crucial there, because that'll be helpful when it comes to our file formats later. And it consists of a number of webisodes. So 2 items of hardware that could be used to create the animation series. So again, this is testing your knowledge of hardware that you need on a computer. So how would you create an animation? What hardware, so physical components of a computer, will you need? And then 2 types of software other than animation software that could be used during the production of it. So think of things like images that might be created, scripts that might need to be written, and that type of software there. And explain one reason why a storyboard is a suitable pre-production document for one of those webisodes. So 2 marks here. Again, mention a Velocity Girl element in there, but this is usually one of those earlier questions you get. But why is a storyboard useful for creating an animation, essentially? So obviously this is testing your understanding of why you would use a storyboard in a situation. Okay, let's have a look at question 4 on the next one. We have got to create a visualization diagram here of the reward screen of the smartphone health app. Now, they can be really sneaky in these questions here. There was one a little while ago. In fact, I think it's for this one we've got coming up in a minute, where they asked you to create a contents page for a magazine, and loads of my groups did the front cover, thinking of course they're going to ask you to do the front cover. So really read these questions carefully to make sure you don't lose marks. Obviously I couldn't give them marks for it because it didn't have any of the content on it. So this is going to be creating a visualization diagram. So it says here what it's giving you the marks for. 9 marks. Crucial annotations. Please don't forget to put annotations on. Justify what you're doing. I always say to my lot, imagine you've come up with a design and then you go off on holiday for the next 3 weeks and someone's got to make it. So you want to be able to give it over to someone and they know exactly what you want to make without having to come back to you and go, oh, excuse me, what colour should this be, or what text you want here. So do go into detail on this one, and it's going to be things such as your layout, so use of white space, use of typography, use of colour, use of actual how useful it is. So this is going to be for the reward screen. So what do you want a reward screen to look like? Make sure it says the words reward screen. Make sure it's got something on there about the rewards on there. So make sure it's linked to that scenario. Okay, let's have a look at number 4 for this last one. Okay, so this one's another. I'm going to do a video on this one actually in a little bit about how you do the mood board questions, because a lot of mine struggle on these ones. So they'll usually give you some pictures, and some of them will be suitable, some of them won't be. So they want to design a special front cover for the first edition of the magazine, and you need to create a mood board. So when you do a mood board, obviously you've not got like magazines in front of you, so they give you these pictures here, and you have to create that mood board based on these pictures. So you got to choose 6 images from figure 1. You don't need to draw them. I've had that happen in the past. Please don't draw them. But you do need to say which images you would use and where you would position them. This is a really crucial one. So some of my groups in the past have literally just split this grid into 6 and then just did them like that. So they do take account for where you place things. So think about that as well. So choose 6. As long as they are relevant for a special edition of a magazine for BG Style, so things like fashion, Teenage Boy, for example, there'll always be some in here that aren't necessarily useful. So, for example, The Older Man's, this one's your kind of red herring here. He wouldn't be on your front cover. We're Open, probably wouldn't need that on your front cover either. One with Bag, you could argue the fashion element on that one. But again, you're just going to need to justify why you're choosing them. So for example, I might choose this male with the skateboard and say, because it's obviously being suitable for all genders, teenagers like to skateboard, therefore this one might draw in teenage boys who like to skateboard, for example. So you just need to draw a box where you place it, label it. So I could put 18 male with skateboard and then do like a little arrow coming off of it. Or if I do a big enough box, I could write the annotation in there to justify why I've chosen it. The more you can link it to BG Style, the better. So don't just say it's a nice image. Link it to this scenario, this magazine in there. And that's how, because obviously it's 12 marks. This one is a big mark question. Okay, that's question 4 done. Let's have a look at question. Oh, so this has got a second part to it. So a physical mood board, again that keyword being physical. It's also being created by another member of the team. 2 items other than images that could be included on it. So all the way through testing your knowledge of what actually needs to go in these. So don't put images down. But what else could you put on a physical mood board? So physical ones are ones that can contain like textures and fabrics. Don't put things such as video and sound because it's a physical one rather than digital one. They need to now identify some hardware, so this is tracking our hardware knowledge, to convert it from a physical mood board into a digital. Now, in this question, how can I take a piece of paper in front of me and get it onto the computer? What hardware can I use to do that? And that's what that question is asking. So let's have a look now at number 5. So again, another big question here, 10 marker. So the magazine is going to contain a wide range of articles covering fashion, music and events. It's also going to include competitions with readers winning samples of products. This is the one I was telling you about. Here you go. So you got to create a visualization diagram of the contents page. Now this is one where my group slipped up because they did the front cover. So contents page, keyword here. It needs to contain stuff about fashion, stuff about music, stuff about events, stuff about competitions. So they haven't put that in there just for fun to fill the page. They've put that in there because your visualization diagram needs to contain something about these 4. And just like I said for the other one, you need to annotate that so I could pass it off to someone else and they'd be able to create it without having to come back to me to ask for more information. So I want to know what colour, I want to know what font style you want to use, I want to know where things are going to be positioned. And also you need to justify your decisions. So tell me why you want the competitions section to be yellow. What's yellow associated with? Winning, kind of gold, medals, etc. So things like that. So kind of go into detail and justify why you're doing what you're doing. Okay, so that's that question. Let's have a look, see what the other one's got in store for us. Number 5. So this one, Velocity Girl. This is a lovely, our classic legislation question. 2 acts of legislation that would apply to the creation of the animated series. Choose from this and put a tick in there. So which 2 of these will need to be taken account of when dealing with the animated series? So you're just going to look through these and tick the 2 you think are relevant. Lastly, the Velocity Girl character itself will be protected by intellectual property rights held by MVTion. Why are those important to MVTion? So this is checking why is it important for companies to make sure they protect things that belong to them, such as their logos or their photographs or their characters, for example. So think about other people using Disney characters. What why is that a problem for Disney if other people are starting to make things with their characters? That's that sort of question there. Okay, and then lastly, let's look at this one. So question 5 on this one. So we're back on our health app here. When a player launches the health app on their smartphone, video plays that explains to them how the app works and what they need to do. So I actually created this one the other day for the storyboards video. So I'll put a link to that up here so you can have a look through, see what I actually did here. But again, they're telling you that you need to create a storyboard for those opening 30 seconds. So make sure the durations you put for these 6 sections add up to 30 seconds. They'll be looking at that. Make sure the content is linked for an explainer about how an app works and what they need to do on their phone. So you know that this app's going to be, they go around, they take photos, they upload the photos, they get points, and then they can exchange those for prizes or food in shops. You basically want to make up something to go in there. Don't worry about your drawing. You do not get marks for the art here. Nothing in here says you get marks for the art. And if you are an artist, please, please do not spend ages making it look beautiful, because as much as it's lovely to the eye, you won't get any marks for it. And I'd rather you focus that time on your 12-mark question or going back over your questions. So your mark here is content, layout, fitness for purpose, and the scene information. So there's again a range of 3 levels of marks, so a mark band 3, 2 and 1. To get the higher mark band, you need to have 3 technical bits of information at least. So camera angles, duration, lighting, sound effects, shot numbers, things like that need to be in there. First thing I tell my lot to do every time is just go through and number these: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Easy peasy. So that's what you got to do in this one. Create a storyboard. Let's have a look at the next set of questions. Okay, this one's also got a part B. So four pieces of computer hardware. My goodness, 4 pieces of computer hardware that would be needed to create the video storyboard. So again, what items of computer will you need to be able to create a storyboard? So that could be a graphics tablet, could be the keyboard, could be the mouse, etc., etc. Most appropriate type of software to create a video storyboard. So what software might you use to create a storyboard? And then explain. How rude. So identify the most appropriate type of software and then explain why it's the most appropriate type of software. So again, this is checking your understanding. So you can't just spout off software. You need to explain why it's suitable. Link it to a storyboard for this one, please. Explain why it is. Okay, so that's question 5. Question 6. This one is a target audience based question. So explain why the age of the target audience will affect the design of the smartphone app. So this has already told you it's an adult based smartphone app. So why do they need to make sure that the age is covered? Because, for example, would you design the same sort of app for a 5-year-old as you would for an adult? No. Explain that in here, essentially. Okay, so let's go through and have a look at this next one. So question 6 on here is a file format based question. So a suitable file format for the final electronic versions, keyword there, of the following products. So the electronic version of the comic and the electronic version of the webisode. This is an animation. This is a comic, so it is going to be a graphic based one. So you've got a graphic file format suitable for the web and an animation file format suitable for the web. That's your question on there. And lastly on this one, 2 pieces of hardware that could be used to create a digital visualization diagram for the contents page. So what hardware pieces of computer will you use to create a visualization diagram? And that could be, for example, again, graphics tablet, mouse, keyboard, etc. Okay, so you see here there's a theme running through all of these, and all of them are linked to the scenario at the beginning. We're getting nearer to the end now. So I thought that last one was question 6. Oh, that was a part B. So that one was linked to that last question. So question 6 on this one. Again, health and safety based one here. Consideration must be given to the health and safety of the staff. For each of the aspects below, identify one health and safety risk and one method to reduce the risk. So not only are you identifying the risk in this one, you're also saying how you can reduce or lessen the risk. So this one, working with lights, that's going to be a heights and electricity based question, and power cables, obviously electricity based. So on here you might say, for example, there's a risk of people tripping over the power cables, so you must make sure that they are properly secured down and covered. For example, it could be if you're working in an outdoor location, to make sure that they are waterproofed. Lighting, it could be to do with lifting heavy equipment, so making sure that the appropriate number of people are involved so that nobody injures their backs, dropping them from heights, etc. So again, a classic question there. So I think that is question 6 done for each of these. All right, question 7. The smartphone health app will collect the GPS position of each of the photographs. Explain why the user may be concerned about their privacy. So again, this is a legislation based one. So obviously this is looking at how you're going to ensure that their location data is kept secure, and why that might be a concern. So what would be an issue if where they were at this particular time and place would be an issue if it got out, for example. And then one limitation that will need to be considered with the use of images on a smartphone both out. Again, this is your copyright one. So why do you need to be careful about using images on there, you know, of different places or different people? Okay, so that's question 7 for this one. Question 7 for this one. The production of BG Style magazine involves a large number of people who use a work plan. Identify 3 parts other than tasks of a work plan. So again, this is your part 1 question, so a nice low level question. What are the contents of a work plan? So you could put in here contingency, duration, milestones, what else have we got, activities, anything that isn't a task essentially you could put in here. Again, a lovely nice question here. Right, and then we're going on to the biggie one after this one. And this has gone on to the biggie one. No, it's not. This one is asking you to create a visualization diagram for the front cover of the first edition of Vertigo Comics. So this one at least is the front cover. We've already covered about how to do a visualization diagram, so I'm not going to go over this one again. But just to remind you once more that it does tell you here that the target audience is between 10 and 16, mostly girls, but they are hoping that boys will also read it. So take that into account when you're designing it, because they will. How fit it is for purpose, they will give you marks based on that. And again, those annotations, remember, I want to be able to take your document and be able to mock up this cover without having to ask you any questions. So that's how you'll go through and do that. And they'll always tell you what it's about. So this is the first draft of a mind map about the content and house style, and it's going to be given to the app developer to create the app. Discuss the suitability of the content. So content as well as the layout. So it's not just the layout itself, but also the content for the app developer. Okay, this is really crucial, these parts here. And I'm going to go through and do the same for this one. This is the first draft of a mind map about a possible house style for the magazine. This is going to be given to the graphics department of the magazine. You're sensing a theme here, right? Discuss the suitability of the content and the layout for the use for the graphics department. And then lastly, this one is a storyboard. So it's the second draft of the storyboard for the opening title sequence. And it's going to be given to the animator who will create the title sequence. Discuss the suitability of the storyboard for the opening title sequence for the Velocity Girl animation series. So how suitable is the storyboard for the opening title sequence? So all of these questions, these 3 questions, are going to cover the same content. You are going to talk about the document itself, the mind map itself. Yeah, who it's for. How is it helpful to the graphics department in this case, or how is it helpful to the animator? Then you are going to pick out 2 strengths, 2 weaknesses and improvements, at least one. And then you're going to explain how each of those are relevant for the animator, or the graphics department. So let's start with this one. I'm going to just go through one for here. So if I pick out a strength of this document, I can say that it has a central node, so using those key terminology there, and a variety of subnodes. And this is helpful for the this one is going to be for the graphics department, so they have everything sectioned and they're able to find the sections clearly, which means they can find their way around the mind map easily. I could, however, say that a weakness is that there are some sections which don't have any branches attached to them. Now this is going to cause some confusion for the graphics department because they won't know where these belong when it comes to trying to design the house style. And you're going to rinse and repeat that all the way through. And then that's it. So it's always going to end with a 12-mark question, no matter which one you're on. And like I say, always suggest to my lot, go through, read the scenario first, and then go and do this 12-mark question from the front, because you're fresher at the beginning. You've not got in a frenzy because you think, oh, I've done really badly, I might as well just fail it now. You're still in that fresh frame of mind. So I suggest doing this question first, and then going back afterwards. Now hopefully it's given you a good idea of how these documents work, and what to expect in them. If there's anything else I can do, please do let me know. As always, do take care, and I'll see you soon for another video.